Hello everybody, this is Lara from Pure Elliott Wave with your daily analysis for Bitcoin, Ethereum and XRP. Bitcoin first, as usual, we now have pivots on price formed. There's a little pivot here and there's a little pivot here. So I'm going to compare peaks with RSI and money flow with the same points in price to see if we have bearish divergence, and yes we do. Now just a note, I'm drawing my line on price across the highs because it's visually intuitive, but in order to identify if there is divergence, I'm looking at the closing prices, and I'm not drawing it on this one because the corresponding peak on RSI is on this day. So just be aware that when you want to identify divergence, it's important to be really accurate. Compare exactly the same points in price to the same points in RSI, and because RSI and money flow are calculated on a closing basis, compare it with the closing points for price. Price is closed to a higher high, but RSI and money flow have made lower highs. So now with bearish divergence and price continuing to find resistance about 35,000, I will expect it's possible we could get a more time-consuming and deeper pullback sooner rather than later, possibly starting here for Bitcoin. If we do see downward movement, look for 31,000 initially to provide support. If price moves below that, then next support is just below 29,000. Now it is also possible that we could see another higher high on a closing basis, and we could see double bearish divergence develop before we see that pullback. It's impossible for me to tell you if the pullback is going to turn up now, here, or if it's going to turn up in a few more days, another week or so. I'm just outlining the two most likely scenarios I see for now, and right now I expect it's most likely that the pullback could turn up now and here. Volume was strongly pushing price higher up toward the high, and then at the high we also have some weakness in volume at the last high. So there is some decline in volume that also leads to a short-term bearish look for Bitcoin. ADX is very extreme. A pullback here may now be needed to relieve these very extreme conditions. It's close to 60, well above 45, and it's been above both DX lines for a while now. This is now getting toward the look of a very, very extreme trend for this market, where we would expect some more time-consuming consolidation or a deeper pullback to relieve these extreme conditions before the bullish run can continue. Here are the corresponding points to price with that red bearish divergence line. In RSI, price made a higher high on a closing basis. RSI made a lower high on a closing basis. At the last high for price on a closing basis, there was some weakness in terms of strength as measured by RSI. So this is bearish, and this indicates we might be about to see a deeper pullback begin here. Same with money flow, and note I'm comparing this point with this point here. That is the same point we see in price, but I'm mostly taking it from RSI, so I'm just going to match that to money flow. My Elliott Wave count for Ethereum now sees a complete 5-step forward pattern here. I am labeling it minute wave 1, and it's ended with a very strong bearish engulfing candlestick pattern. So with a 5-step forward pattern complete, we could be about to see a 3-step back pattern. That is the basic Elliott Wave structure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps forward, and then we'll have A, B, C, 3 steps back. Most likely area for minute wave 2 to find support may be the logarithmic function of the 0.618 Fibonacci ratio, which is at 1648.04, and minute wave 2 may not move beyond the start of 1 below 1521.78. This Elliott Wave count does not expect a new low below this point. Daily technicals for Ethereum yesterday has indeed closed as a very bearish engulfing candlestick pattern. This is the strongest reversal pattern we can see. It doesn't have push from volume, but bearish candlestick patterns don't need push from volume for us to have confidence in them. Bullish candlestick patterns do, bearish ones don't, because price can fall of its own weight. That's a shorthand way of saying price can fall due to a lack of interest from buyers just as easily as it can due to increased activity of sellers. So when price falls on declining volume, we can interpret that as most likely to be a lack of interest from buyers. Volume was increasing up toward the high, and again for the short term up toward the high, but there's a weakness from this point to this point in volume. At the high, volume was weaker than it was earlier. So this is the 5th wave, and here's the 3rd wave. It's really normal to see a 5th wave finish on weaker volume. For cryptocurrencies, if we were looking at a third wave 1 degree higher, I would be expecting a blow off top, but this is a first wave and they can behave a little bit more normally like other markets. So we can see weaker volume, smaller distance travelled, and a little bit of weakness in a fifth wave to end minute wave 1. This has a good fit. This volume profile supports the Elliott Wave count. The upward trend for Ethereum, though, is extreme, but not very extreme, and certainly not as extreme as it can get for this market. RSI has reached overbought, but there's no bearish divergence. We could see some bearish divergence develop as price moves higher before we see the end of minute wave 1. There is, however, some short-term bearish divergence between price and money flow, so this offers a little bit of support to the Elliott Wave count. Price is closed to a higher high, but money flow has made a lower high, so there is some weakness indicated at the high from bearish divergence with money flow. XRP also, I can see a completed 5-step forward pattern. I'll label this minuet wave 1, looking now for a 3-step back pattern. Now again, this could be a premature labeling of minute wave 1 over. It could move higher before we see the deeper pullback expected for minute wave 2. So let's have a look and see how much support is there for the idea of a short-term high in place from classic technical analysis. We don't have a pivot yet developed here for XRP, so I can't consider divergence between these 2 points. I would need to see a downward candlestick following this high before I had confidence enough that there's a pivot developed here, and then I can compare the corresponding points between RSI and price and money flow and price. Resistance is still holding at 62 cents, but the current daily candlestick looks like it may be completing a hanging man candlestick pattern. This one here a couple of days ago is almost a hanging man pattern, but there's a bit of an upper wick, so I'm not going to label that a hanging man. If this current session closes with only a very small to little no upper wick, then I will label this a hanging man. The current session, we're just in the afternoon now, so there's still a few hours to go. But if this is a hanging man candlestick pattern, it would support the view that we could be about to get a trend change because it's a bearish reversal pattern. For XRP as well, there's some weakness in volume at the last high. Volume was strongly pushing price higher. Again, for the short term, volume pushed price higher, but here, volume is weaker than here. This supports the Elliott Wave count that sees this as a fifth wave. It doesn't eliminate the possibility, though, of the fifth wave continuing higher and extending further and exhibiting further weakness at its end and further developing some bearish divergence. For XRP, ADX has now just moved into very extreme territory, not as extreme as it can get for this market, but it is above 45 and it is above both DX lines. So we're starting to get closer to the point where we can have a higher confidence that a deeper pullback is most likely to occur. Not quite there yet though. We could see that fifth wave extend further first. There's no bearish divergence between price and RSI. There's no bearish divergence between price and money flow. So the conclusion for XRP is there's not enough indication for a real confidence that minute wave 1 is over. So I'm going to have a question mark over this one. I want to see a bearish candlestick pattern complete after this session. So I want Saturday to complete as a downward session. If that happens, then I'd have a little bit more confidence in labeling my minuet 1 over and minuet wave 2 underway. While that hasn't happened, it's also possible that this fifth wave could extend higher. That's it from me today with your quick analysis update, and I hope everyone's looking forward to a wonderful weekend.